In 1346, the Mongol army laid siege to the Genoese trading port of Kaffa in Crimea, but the attackers were stalling. Their ranks were rapidly thinning, dropping not from arrows or swords, but from a sudden, aggressive fever. Facing a demoralized and dying army, the Mongol commander, Johnny Beg, ordered a desperate shift in tactics. His men loaded their own infected dead onto trebuchets and slung the rotting bodies over the fortress walls, shattering them in the streets below. Inside, the Genoese merchants were trapped behind massive stone fortifications. As the gruesome artillery rained down, the city quickly succumbed to the putrid smell and the very real outbreak that followed. Hoping to outrun the slaughter, the surviving merchants scrambled onto their galleys and set sail for the Mediterranean. They left the dead behind, believing the nightmare was over. Their retreat was an illusion. In fleeing, the merchants served as a delivery system for a biological payload that would soon explode across the continent. The Europe they sailed back to was densely packed. Cities were overcrowded, ventilation was poor, and open sewers ran directly through the streets. Outside the cities, the economy ran entirely on serfdom. Millions of peasants were tied to the land they worked, functioning as an endless supply of cheap, expendable labor for wealthy lords. Above both the peasants and the lords sat the Catholic Church, wielding absolute authority over politics, culture, and the strict rules governing the afterlife. This created a society that was highly concentrated, physically filthy, and rigidly immobile, a perfectly sealed incubator for the incoming plague. The weapon was Yersinia pestis, a microscopic bacterium naturally carried by fleas. Once inside a human host, it executed an efficient multi-pronged attack. Most commonly, it attacked the lymphatic system. Bacteria replicated in the lymph nodes closest to the flea bite, creating dark, painfully swollen masses called buboes that would eventually burst. If the bacteria bypassed the lymph nodes, it triggered the septicemic form, invading the bloodstream directly. This caused massive internal bleeding and tissue necrosis, turning the victim's fingers, toes, and nose black. Finally, if the infection reached the lungs, it mutated into pneumonic plague. The victim would cough up blood, allowing the bacteria to become aerosolized, jumping directly from human to human via coughing. The speed of infection was staggering. A person could wake up healthy, develop a fever by noon, and be dead the following morning. By attacking the lymph nodes, the blood, and the air itself, the bacterium bypassed every physical and social barrier of the medieval era. Within 5 years, 50 million dead were buried in Europe alone. Graveyards overflowed, forcing survivors to dig massive trench tombs. As civic leaders, doctors, and priests perished, basic social order dissolved. The medical community was entirely blind to the existence of germs. Physicians relied on the ancient theory of the four humors, believing the disease was caused by a simple imbalance of bodily fluids. To restore this balance, doctors sliced open the swollen buboes and packed the open wounds with a custom poultice made from flower roots, tree resins, and human feces. Internal prescriptions were just as lethal. Some patients were instructed to drink multiple glasses of urine a day. Wealthy citizens drank wine mixed with crushed emeralds, which predictably shredded their digestive tracts. Then there was the vicary method. A live chicken would have its backside plucked bare and strapped directly to the patient's swollen glands. The logic was that the chicken would draw the poison out of the host. If the bird died, they simply strapped on another one. In the end, these agonizing interventions achieved nothing. They only proved that the institutions people relied on for safety had failed, leaving humanity to face a mortality they could neither understand nor treat. By the time the first wave of the pandemic burned out in 1353, an estimated 200 million people were dead worldwide. Across Europe, bustling manors and trade hubs were reduced to silent ghost towns. Surviving nobles looked out over their vast, unharvested fields and realized they had a severe problem. The massive, expendable workforce required to run their estates simply no longer existed. This chart illustrates the sudden, violent macroeconomic inversion that followed. The descending line shows the massive drop in population, while the ascending line tracks the resulting economic value of individual labor. Because there were so few workers left, their scarcity translated directly into leverage. For the first time, surviving peasants held negotiating power. They refused to work just for the right to live on a plot of land. They demanded better conditions and payment in actual coin, and if a lord refused, the peasants could simply walk down the road to a rival estate that was desperate enough to pay. The psychological hold of the Old World was breaking, too. The Catholic Church, which had promised salvation but failed to protect its flock from the plague, saw a steep deterioration in its absolute cultural dominance as a massive number of its clergy perished. The mortality rate broke the economic machinery of the 14th century. By making labor more valuable than land, it dismantled the foundations of serfdom, replacing a world of bondage with negotiated wages.